Hello and welcome to Tech's podcast series. This week I spoke to Rosann Santos, who's Director of Alumni Relations at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. This week is all about online events. How can we organise them the best, the build up to them, tips, tricks, some of the challenges involved in it as well, how we can make them as relevant and successful as possible. Loads of great content, and it should be really relevant for all our alumni relations professionals and community engagement professionals as well. So enjoy. Cheers. Hello, Rosann. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Tech podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to meet you and to learn more about your organization and share what I've learned.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. So obviously you are at the moment our Director of Alumni Relations at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. So maybe just give us a little bit of background of where you're at now and how you got into alumni relations. That would be fantastic.
Sure. That's a pretty decent story. A good career story. I always say jobs, careers are not a straight line, and I'm no different. I went to graduate school to become a professor, and I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't like dealing with plagiarism. I didn't like grading papers. And I was offered an opportunity to work in residence life. And so I have been in student affairs and enrollment management for almost 20 years. 2 years ago, through my former supervisor, who was a mentor, and I found out later also a sponsor, she asked me one day in one of our one on ones, "What's next for you?" I mean, that's fantastic, right? Who asks you that, right? Everybody wants you to kind of be robotic and do your job. And I told her, I said, I really feel I have a gap in skills around my fundraising, philanthropy, alumni work. I don't have any experience in that area. I have experience in academic affairs, enrollment management, student affairs. And I don't plan on leaving the higher education space. And she's like, all right, so let's keep talking about that. A year later, change of leadership at our university, at our college, an opportunity came around for me to kind of make a lateral move into an alumni relations position. I was asked if I wanted to just try it out for a couple of months. I said, well, what happens if I don't like it? And she was like, I'll take you right back. So I was really fortunate to have someone who was willing to mentor and sponsor me on that level. I loved it. The new vice president in that area was like, if she wants to stay, I want her to stay. And I stayed. And here I am 2 years later, the director of alumni engagement. And it was a transition out of enrollment management and student affairs. Part of it was planful and putting it out loud, saying it out loud, putting it into the universe. Part of it is having a really great mentor. Part of it is having people who speak well of me when I'm not in the room. And part of it is me wanting to try something new. And I've loved it.
Awesome. And so obviously it's really great to hear someone who really loves their job. So on I guess a day-to-day basis, what do you particularly like about your role? Like, is it that you get to obviously connect your alumni together, or what is it that really gets you going?
I really love that I've had to advance my skills on LinkedIn. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is how I have been able to really connect with our alums. And I stalk them in a really great way. I am bringing to them opportunities. I'm like, how can I help you shine? I see that you are the director of such and such in the FBI, or that you have the vice president position in a big HR firm, or you're a rookie cop. How can I make you shine? Would you like to be on a panel discussion? Would you like to do a webinar, whatever you're an expert in? Would you like to mentor? Would you like me to connect you to someone who can mentor you so that you can move up the ladder? And that is what I love the most, because I'm a people person. I'm highly extroverted, and I've been able to connect with people that I normally would not have, because of their roles in law enforcement, public administration, government, and public management. That's not necessarily where I have in my career have traveled. But in this position, because many of our graduates are in those fields, lawyers, we have a lot of students who go on to law school. it's been really great to connect people and to mentor and create mentorship opportunities for our students who will eventually become alumni.
Sure. And so for our listeners who may be, maybe a little bit new to LinkedIn or maybe a bit wary of how it might be operated. So is it a case that you're just searching by your university alumni and then just messaging them, or do you have any like certain tactics that you use to find the most receptive alumni maybe?
I am, you know how people will do cold calls? I
Yeah.
do cold emails,
Nice.
cold direct messaging, because I'm coming to them with something that will only kind of m- help them in their in their career.
Mhm.
And I have never had an alumni say to me, go away.
Yeah.
Oh, never,
Yeah.
never. And I've been, this particular strategy that I've been using has been since COVID, since the pandemic, because I'm like, how am I going to meet people and talk to people? Usually they're calling the office or they're coming in to visit. But this has allowed me to kind of dig right into the social media world.
Yeah.
And I will do the search on a college's alumni and put in some keywords, and I will call people. I will email them. I will introduce myself. I was like, would you like to have a chat on the phone? And oftentimes I don't reach out unless I have a specific opportunity that I think they might be interested in.
Right.
So
So
I
you've
don't
got that
often,
value that you can actually give them on the other end of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, I have an event on February 12th. And I think after reading your profile, you might be really great. And I would love for our students to learn from someone like you because you were in their shoes 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
they call me within 24 hours.
Yeah, and that's the key that we talk about quite a lot here at Toucan Tech, is the idea of keeping things as relevant as possible and not sending mass messages to just everyone, because everyone's going to see that, but like, no thought has gone into that. That's not to me, but you've taken it almost like 3-4 steps further and actually message them individually with an
Yes,
idea of an event or a program or whatever they might be interested in. And it also just shows that extra level of care. And as you've already mentioned, me speaking myself as an alumni of a school, if someone from an alumni relations department got in contact with to me, I'd be absolutely thrilled about that, especially on a personal level. So maybe it's not just thinking about the wide approach, but actually on an individual level as well.
absolutely. That's always the best way to go. You treat people and you meet them where they are.
Sure. So that's one way that you've been obviously really successful. You've been engaging with your alumni. Have you had any other, especially given this year with the changing circumstances, some, tactics or ideas or events that have been working really well given the current context?
Well, I think about the class of 2020
Hmm.
and how they did not have a real senior year.
Gutting. It's
I
honestly
mean, it
so
breaks my
sad.
heart. I get chills
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah.
So I've been trying to host events that are very industry specific. So,
Hmm.
for example, we have had a great showing to anything that touches on cybersecurity and the industry in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I've learned a great deal about the industry. Anything that has to do with law enforcement, there is a huge interest in spite of all of the turmoil going on. We have a lot of young people who want to go into law enforcement and make it better.
Yeah.
So anything that has to do with law enforcement. I had a panel discussion of 4 women who have been chiefs of police around the country. And that was one of my best events.
And are those people who are sitting on there, are they your alumni, or are they just people that you found who are interested in talking?
That's a great question. The cybersecurity panels that I've done, all alumni.
Cool.
They all graduated from our college with either a degree in cyber, a master's degree in digital forensics and cyber, public administration, computer information security, even law enforcement, because it is a type of law enforcement.
Hmm.
The one on the women in law enforcement, the moderator was an alum who brought
Okay.
the idea to me.
That's the connection there, is that you have the, yeah. Okay.
He had the connections. He knew these women. He knew 3 of the 4 women personally. And he says, you think the student body would like to hear? I was like, yes, they would love to hear from women at the top. Some of them, 2 of them were women of color, a Latina and an African American
Hmm.
woman. And all four of them were absolutely fantastic and role models.
Sure. And what about the format? So obviously you had your almost your host and then your panelists. So were questions coming in from your alumni who were watching as well, or how did it work?
So I do both. I start off with a set of 3 to 5 questions because the panelists always want to feel prepared.
Of course.
My events are not about gotcha moments. They're really about bringing something to the table where our students and our young recent alumni can take something away.
Yeah.
And so I give them 3 to 5 questions that I start the conversation with, and then that prompts all the questions in the chat. And
Right. Okay.
then I start reading off the questions in the chat, or my moderator, depending on who's moderating. Oftentimes, I like for another alum to moderate.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, it'll be mostly alums. I would say 95% of my programs, the speakers, the panelists are alums. In the case of the one on law enforcement, an alum came to me and said, "Would you like me to do this?" Of course I would. I would not, you're just gonna make me look good and you're gonna
Yeah.
make this event fabulous. And his connections were so high level that how could I say no to that? And I was like, why don't you moderate it? You know these folks, you know the business. I'll just be your back end person. And
Yeah.
it was perfect.
So actually, this is actually, I was about to ask you about how did you almost get the panelists, but actually, you're almost going through really well connected people. So you've got your host who's got maybe an expert in cybersecurity or law enforcement who've
Correct.
probably got a few better connections than
Yes.
yourself in the area. So there's going to be able to get that there. And what about like kind of follow-ups after the panel? Did you have like a summary email go out, or what worked after that?
Always do. We always have an email that says, "Thank you for attending. Here are the emails of the panelists. They said that you are free to email them if you would like to follow up, if you would like some mentorship." And then we send them the recording of the event,
Yeah.
and we send them additional information like, for future events, here's the link to our calendar. So that's always goes out anywhere between 24 and 48 hours after the event, depending on how quickly we can get the video ready to go, because we
Hmm.
want to send it all out in one email.
Okay, fantastic. And we spoke a little bit before about how potentially online events or what's happened in the last year has made it a little bit easier to get people to come. Do you think that you potentially would have been able to hold these events had they been in person in the normal time?
That's a great question. I would have definitely been able to hold events. I would have had less attendance.
Hmm.
Listen, 30 students or recent alums in a room is a great number
Hmm.
in, an after work event. So I would have been able to. I would not have been able to do as many because I could only do but one a week. Online, I was doing 2 to 3 a week.
Wow, cool.
And number two, they're not costing me the food budget.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't love to stand around and eat,
Yeah.
crudité with with the alums and with my colleagues, but there's also been kind of this cost savings on some level around events.
I didn't think about that at all. So
Oh, I
not
did.
only from a time perspective, but also if you're potentially, taking out of I don't know if it's an alumni relations or advancement budget, for example, you've actually got more capability from that point of view to actually run more events. So it's about, taking the opportunity not just to be like, oh, this is a lot easier now, but actually, we can run 2 or 3 different events on whether that's cybersecurity or law enforcement or loads of different sectors, like in a
Absolutely.
week. If,
Absolutely.
if that
And
is,
it's been fun. I mean, it can be tiring, right? This whole work-life balance
yeah.
is not balanced anymore. It's all the same space.
Hmm.
It's my house, but it's been fun, and the capacity to do a little bit more without turning into a total workaholic
Yeah.
has been manageable. But that's something you have to do for yourself. You have to kind of make sure you're managing all of that.
Sure. So I've really liked this idea of the online events here. So on the same topic, so what are some of the, I guess, the challenges that you face maybe initially when you first started organizing these events? Were there
Yeah.
any difficulties or things that have like progressed?
Well, the first difficulty was tech,
Yeah.
having to learn what Zoom can and can't do.
Hmm.
Um, this whole idea of Zoom bombing and security was a challenge. I don't know if you've heard of
I
that.
have not heard of Zoom. Is that when just random just join the?
And the problem was happening mostly with the education spaces, the younger kids. People were doing very inappropriate things. So if you're having an event,
I
if
shouldn't laugh. I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, I mean, some of it
Yeah.
is fun, but some of it is disturbing. And I don't know if it's because of where I live, but if you don't have a security passcode for
Yeah.
your event and anyone just gets the link and comes on and you're trying to teach your kindergartners the alphabet and they're trying to do something very different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that came to a head very quickly, but Zoom corrected for it very
Mm.
quickly. Um, so that was a challenge. Then the third challenge, I would say, is developing a virtual event reputation. So
Okay.
where I was having what I thought was really good events and good advertising, I was only getting maybe 12 people. Or if I had 100 people register, 10 would come.
The
That's
drop off was
huge
huge. Huge.
attrition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad attrition, not sure any attrition is good, but yes, the drop off was really bad. So developing a reputation where people are like, wait a minute, these events are really good. And having that word of mouth and then reporting on them on LinkedIn. It's like, in case you missed it,
Mm.
hashtag in case you missed it, showing people the videos, letting people know that they could potentially leave with contact information. And so I also had to adjust by upping the level of the event,
Yep.
right? So maybe not just having a general networking event online, but having a networking event for only people who wanted to be immigration lawyers.
Yeah.
Now, that is very specific, very niche. And
Okay.
even if you only have 15 people, it's high quality because you're all kind of in the same field and you're networking and you're going to pull each other up, and if you have a
Right.
student in there who wants to be an immigration attorney and you're an alum who's an immigration attorney, boom, that's like a connection that you can't buy.
Yes, it's
That's
making it even
amazing.
more as specific as relevant as possible, because you do see, you're right, even for example, if you say, networking event for the business school, like you may think that that is specific, but all the different things within that business school are
Right.
huge, like accountancy or sales or whatever, like, so trying to make them actually as specific as possible so people bite on that as
Absolutely.
well.
And that's why the cyber stuff has been so popular,
Yeah.
because our speakers talk about the certifications you need, the great, what are the names of the companies who are hiring? The government is a big hiring place for people who have these levels of expertise. Cybersecurity has negative unemployment, which
Mhm.
means there's more jobs than people to fill them. Starting salaries are 75K. So when you start putting this out on hashtags and
Yeah.
flyers and on graphics, and you know that you have a large number of students who are studying this, and you have a large number of alum who want to transition into it, then you start to capture imaginations. Then you start to say, wait a minute, I got to go to Roseanne's event. I got to go to alumni relations event. And like you said, they're not doing anything else.
Yeah.
So they might as well be making important contacts so that they can,
Yeah.
get a job
Sure.
or
And
transition.
yeah, and obviously you mentioned almost the hashtags on social media there, but you mentioned the high attrition rates obviously between people accepting and leaving. Are there any tactics you used in the lead up to an event that
Yes.
to prevent that almost, or to make sure people actually turn up?
Yes. We do two things now. We send an email and a text message 24 hours before and an hour before.
And an hour before as well.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
cool.
We schedule them, we send them out. We have he's an intern, a 20-hour a week kind of person who helps us with all of this.
Mhm.
And he sets these messages up in advance. And that is huge because people forget. If I'm advertising something a month in advance, you forget an hour before. So I'm going to
Mhm.
remind you 24 hours before and an hour before the event. I'm going to resend you the link. I'm going to send you everything you need so that if you did forget, in that very reminder, you could just click and get to the meeting.
Yeah.
The other thing, very quickly, I want to say about how do we figure out what to do, what to make the events look like is assessment. I also do all of the assessment for my area. So the surveys, the focus groups, the asking questions indirectly or formally. And that is how I was able to understand what our alumni wanted. And they
Right.
were telling me, we want networking events, we want mentorship initiatives, and we want career and industry focused events, panel discussions, networking. I want to meet someone in the industry I want to go into.
Yeah.
That's a key network.
Right. So it's not actually about just being like, right, I'm going to make loads of events. I'm just going to go and do it. It's actually taking a step back and be like, okay, before I put all this effort into creating the events, what do my alumni students actually want? And this may change if you're a school, university, business school, whatever. They may be slightly different. So it's important to put those surveys out to figure out exactly what they actually want.
Got to meet people where they are. What do they want? I'm going to
Yeah.
do what they want, not what I want. I'll be
Cool.
sitting in a Zoom room alone if it's what I want.
Okay, well, we're getting pretty close to the end here. It's gone very
Okay.
quickly, which is always always a good sign. But quite a nice way to finish, actually, is in terms of advice. So, what's a good bit of advice that either you have received or you would give to another, maybe someone who's just starting out in alumni relations or just working in alumni relations, as it goes?
I think the biggest piece of advice is do not be scared to approach people. And if you really are that shy or that introverted, find out someone you know that knows that person and ask for the introduction.
Yeah.
I think that is incredible advice, even advice that I had not used. I'm like, how
Mhm.
am I going to meet this person? Should I send them a cold email, an in-mail, a cold call? And then I'm like, then someone said to me, figure out who they know that you know, because 6 degrees of separation, the world is tiny.
Yeah.
And that is the best piece of advice that I would have. Don't be scared to approach people, even if you've never met them, because people always want to talk about themselves. And I mean that in a good way. I don't mean
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
in an arrogant way. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I'm saying to you, Ed, this is amazing. You're talking to people in New York and you're doing these vlogs. I want to bring you back to your alma mater so you could talk about this. People
Yeah.
eat that up. People eat that up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, to repeat, if I'm too shy to talk to you, I met Kiana at that conference, your colleague. I can say, hey, Kiana, remember we met at this conference? Would you mind introducing me to Ed? He went to the school I work at, and I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
love to connect with him. And
Yeah.
so that would be a big piece of advice I would have.
That is a fantastic way to finish. Thank you so much for your insights, particularly into the online events. Haven't really covered that in such detail so far.
Okay.
So seriously, thank you so much, and hope you have a good Christmas as well.
May I make one more
Of
pitch?
course, of course, of course, of
Thank
course.
you so much for indulging me. One of the things, because I love what I do so much,
Yeah,
I do a lot of things on the side.
yeah,
And one of the things I just launched is a podcast called Design Your Decade. And
cool.
it is a career podcast. It's like a mini masterclass in career greatness, how to move up, how to move on, how to get into the C suite. And I would love people to kind of listen to it and hear it's free, right? Podcasts are
Yeah,
free.
yeah.
Designyourdecade.io. And it is in line with everything that I talked about today.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we plug the hell out of it when we
I
put it on.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
And if I can do anything for you at any point, please don't hesitate. I'm at your service.
Thank you so much. All right,
Thank you.
cheers.
Cheers. Happy
Cheers.
holidays.
Cheers.